Welcome to the voices of transparency and excellence. We're not pivoting, the world is spinning like a top. Let's stop, figure things out, get some answers. Come with us on this ride. Warm regards, Rick and Judi.
Welcome to our podcast series where we address crucial topics impacting our campus and community. I am Judi Clarke here with...
I'm Rick Gatteau, and today we are focusing on veterans in our podcast. And with us is Jane York, the Coordinator of Military and Student Veteran Services, and Fred Sganga, the Executive Director of the Long Island State Veterans Home, both from Stony Brook University. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for the invite. Happy to be here.
All right, let's start with our first question. The acronym that the VA goes by is I CARE, which stands for Integrity, Commitment, and Advocacy, Respect, and Excellence. With all the changes to the VA we hear about in the news, what are some of the challenges that you're navigating? Let's start with you, Jane.
Sure. So I work with our student veterans in processing their VA education benefits. And with the cuts that have been made to the VA, with the hiring freeze, we are noticing a bit of a delay in certain cases with processing. And this is to be expected. So what we're trying to do on our end is control what we can control. Obviously, we're not the VA, though we work closely with them. So we advise our student veterans, get your enrollments in early, keep lines of communication open with our office, and we do the same with the VA. We follow up with them in the events that there are delays to get the students their money quickly, to get the school paid quickly, and VA representatives are very cooperative. You have to understand these people are also under immense pressure. They're overloaded as well, but their acronym holds up. In our experience, they certainly do care about our student veterans and their role.
Thank you. Fred?
So I would say from my perspective that the VA has always been good to the State Veterans Home program. We're pretty unique here at Stony Brook. There are only 2 colleges campuses in the entire United States that have a State Veterans Home on it. We're a 350-bed facility caring for all veterans who served who are New York State residents. But I've been watching changes in administration since 2001, and from my perspective, it's a learning curve, and I think it will get to where we need to be. I can tell you from our part, meaning that we care for veterans, and some of their care is paid for by the VA, we're not seeing any delays whatsoever because a lot of our funding is codified in federal law. So, my advice to people is if you want that steady stream to come in, have Congress pass a law, and it usually works out pretty well. Over the last couple of years, I can just say that in my time here at Stony Brook, I've been able to bring $80 million to the campus from the VA in terms of our VA construction grant program. And our facility, which is quite large, is really state-of-the-art. And we like to think that from a maintenance perspective, it's been very good. Also, real quickly, want to put a shout out to the VA. We've done very well with the VA Nurse Recruitment and Retention Grant, and we have a partner in Pat Bruckenthal, our School of Nursing here at Stony Brook. But we've been able to bring over time, first year $330,000, second year $567,000, and next year $678,000. And what we're doing, Judi and Rick, is that we're paying for the nursing school of our employees. So I currently have 19 certified nurses aides that are going to LPN school. The year before that, I had 5 RNs from Suffolk Community College who Pat Bruckenthal accepted into the BSM program here, and we're paying for that as well. So that funding for us has not really been altered at all, and it's going pretty well. But you must advocate. Right after this podcast, I'm on my way to Washington, D.C., and part of that process is to advocate with Congress that will hold the VA's feet to the fire to make sure our veterans are getting what they deserve and what they earned.
So, Fred, I was just curious to follow up on your partnership with the School of Nursing. So talk a little bit, and maybe I was curious, Jane, too, from the student perspective, what are the partnerships that you've been able to build in your areas that help support our veterans?
Me first? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Well, we've done a lot of things. We have a great partner in Alan Ingalls in the Stoller Center, so entertainment, that type of thing. Sean Heilbrunn has been fantastic. Many of the sport teams come to the Veterans Home to engage with our veterans on campus. We have a very robust volunteer program, and many of our students, a lot of them who are pre-nursing or pre-physician assistant, they have to get community service hours in. They can do that right here on our campus. So we find ways to partner with the school. For some of you who are a little old like myself, I was hired by Dr. Shirley Kenny. And one of her first questions to me was, what are you going to do to engage the home more with the rest of the campus? And I've always led my career that way in terms of trying to find those connections with the entire campus.
And I like that Fred brought up volunteer opportunities. We have a honor society here on campus, Salute Honor Society, which is the first National Honor Society for student veterans, and we started our Stony Brook chapter back in 2019. We do inductions every year, and part of our contribution with our Honor Society is to do a volunteer event, at least one per semester. And we've been so happy to be able to do volunteer events at the Veterans Home, to include a lovely event that they put on every November called Vet Mart. They put on a holiday boutique for the residents. We go there for Community Service Day, for beautification of the home. Since COVID, it's been challenging, to get the residents here for our Veterans Day ceremony. But this past Veterans Day ceremony, we were able to shuttle in some residents, and it was just such an honor to have them here and to have their presence for our Veterans Day, and to see them, standing when their branch of service anthem is played. It's just always such a privilege and honor to work with the Veterans Home in any way we can.
I think one of the things that's so incredibly unique about here at Stony Brook is having just the whole spectrum. You've got vets from World War II all the way to military individuals that are starting to show an interest in the whole spectrum from activation to just coming from deployment. Talk a little bit about how incredibly important it is to have kind of that ecosystem of the guys that have been in decades with these new recruits and individuals that are currently active. How does that play a difference in kind of what we provide here?
Well, I like to remind my staff that we're really caring for the 1%. When you think about it, less than 1% of Americans have served in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Marine Corps, and now the Space Force. So it is a special group of people. And for us, in terms of taking care of frail elderly veterans, we have a special challenge because the issue is, and I'm sure Jane can speak to this better than I can, imagine being served in the Navy. You started when you were 18, you did your 4 years, and now you're 22, 23, and a lot of them don't even pay attention upon their discharge from the DOD as to what their benefits are, et cetera. And now it's 65, 70 years later, and they need their nursing home care. So one of the struggles that we face is how do we educate our veterans in the community, starting right here on campus and then for the rest of their life. So repeat your question again, because I want to make sure I answer the essence of it.
I think it's, and it's exactly that. It's like, knowing, if I talk to my younger self, I would share this information. I wish I knew. But the other piece of that is just understanding, looking at all the way from, having vets from World War II all the way to having new recruits and being able to have access to each other. It's got to be magical, right?
We're going to have some magic this summer. Recruitment is up, and I've been in touch with the recruiter for Suffolk County, and we are actually going to have a swearing-in ceremony at the Veterans Home. So we're looking forward to maybe 20 or 30 18-year-olds raising their right hand, but they'll be surrounded by World War II, Korean, and Vietnam vets. So we're excited about that. And that's Captain Logan McNally, who's the local recruiter, and we can't wait to get that done. So,
I hope that's covered. I think that is just the juxtaposition it's got to be.
That's going to be quite some energy in that
room.
I'm
sure. Yeah, of course.
Fred, you mentioned about with recruitment. I'm curious, where are we nationally in terms of recruitment into the armed forces in the U.S.?
I'm not an expert, but from what I hear locally from Captain McNally here in Suffolk County, recruitment is up significantly.
So. Why do you think that is?
I think there's more sense of pride in the country. I think it's coming back. The fact that military service could lead to other career paths. I think the whole new branch of Space Force creates a lot of new job opportunities. I can do my service, get additional training, and then come out in civilian life and get a good job at the end of the day. So
I think that holds up. I was recruiting for the Navy for 2.5 years, and I can tell you in the time that I was recruiting, a big motivator for folks was job security. Yeah. I feel like the military is one of those few organizations left where you can still find real job security in a military career, and you can make it work for you. I mean, some people, they stay active and they make it a 20-year career. Some do their 5 and then they transition to the reserves. And the great thing is you can go back and forth. Yeah. You can be a reservist but go to schools. You could be a reservist but volunteer for deployments and mobilizations. And on top of that, you're getting your education benefits. So you can have it all, essentially.
And I'm always fascinated by guys who said, yeah, I served in the Army and the Navy and the Air Force. So you can even
That's the right order, too. Army, then Navy, then Air Force.
Yeah, and you can switch branches. It's amazing. Sure. There are a lot of guys and gals out there who've done that.
Absolutely. So.
I think it's interesting, and when you think about like our students that are active, what are some of the things from a student doesn't have a military background, isn't active, to when we think about our veteran students or those that are military active? What's the uniquenesses that they're kind of navigating that other students don't?
Student veterans are non-traditional students, purely because of their military service. But on top of that, by the time they get to Stony Brook, for example, they're usually older. Many of them already have families at home. They're paying mortgages. They've been working. So they're not 18 years old. They're not right out of high school. They've got a lot of life experience. And on the one hand, I mean, it's very advantageous. They bring a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience to the university. And on the other hand, I think they can feel a little isolated, kind of like a fish out of water. And they certainly do clock the fact that they can be an older student in a class of younger students, and it separates them. So we try to play to their strengths and bring them together as much as we can and celebrate the fact that they have these differences that are actually advantageous and strengths for them, so that they don't feel different in a way that makes them feel less than.
Jane, can I follow up on that? I'm curious, given your background and your direct work with our veteran students, what are some of the barriers that you've seen, whether it's Stony Brook or just even broadly in higher education, that we need to be attuned to help actually veterans overcome, or things structurally in higher ed that we could change and evolve to be more veteran friendly?
I think there are definitely student veterans who come to the university with disabilities, both physical and what we know as invisible disabilities. And these student veterans may not even realize, first of all, that they have a disability that they incurred in the military. But even if they are aware, they might not be aware of the services that we provide for them to make their process smoother and to enhance their experience at Stony Brook. So we are very fortunate. Our office has an amazing partnership with the Student Accessibility Support Center. We actually have a military liaison in that office who does office hours in our veteran suite, and she has built a rapport with our student veterans. They trust her, they go to her, and they talk amongst themselves about all the accommodations that are available to them that they might not know about. So if our students need to take an absence, or perhaps they need more time on a test, or they're feeling overwhelmed in a classroom, these are all things that can and should be dealt with to give them the best foot forward here.
So it's reported that mental health and wellness is considered a challenge for our veterans, particularly under the age of 45. The Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Doug Collins, reported recently that 17 to 22 veterans commit suicide every day. So can you just talk a little bit about, some of the things that are going on, within your facilities, and then some of the things as what we should be doing here in higher education, as well as just across our communities, to really provide the supports. Loneliness is an absolute, can be a pandemic. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I'm not an expert in mental health as it comes to suicide. We don't really see it in the nursing home setting, but I can tell you Suffolk County as a community has done a real good job trying to address this. Some of you may have heard of the Joseph P. Dwyer peer-to-peer program, and that's a non-medical intervention where veterans can get together, veterans who are on the edge, who can actually engage with each other and have some kind of buddy system where they can prevent any kind of unfortunate episodes. It is around. We do hear every once in a while that a suicide does occur in Suffolk County. It's always a tragic situation. The last one I recall actually happened on the grounds of the VA hospital. It was about a year ago. So I do believe the VA pays a lot of attention to it. I do have the good fortune in my role to attend the National Association of State Directors of Veterans Affairs conferences twice a year. And I can tell you not only Secretary Collins, but all the previous secretaries have always been addressing suicide as a number one issue. So, part of it too, and I think a lot from the Iraq and Afghanistan war, there was so many multiple deployments, and we really didn't really understand the effect of multiple deployments. And this was a period of time where the unemployment rate was really high. And I think a lot of our veterans just re-upped just so they can continue a paycheck at the end of the day. But, every combat, every war has its signature injuries and illnesses. And the one that I see mostly from Iraq and Afghanistan is the fact that they had multiple deployments. Whereas if you went to Vietnam, you did one tour of duty, maybe 2 tours of duty tops. I've heard of 7 or 8 deployments with the Iraq-Afghanistan war, but I'm sure Jane has better info than I do.
I mean, I really think the reason that mental illness is so lethal amongst our community is the fact that veterans in general, they can fly under the radar for so long with a degenerative mental illness. I mean, they really do know how to mask that. And that has everything to do with their military training. Combat veteran, non-combat veteran. All veterans have been trained to be stoic, be strong, to kind of put their feelings on a shelf and get through a mission, whatever that mission may be. And so these typical cries for help that you might look to see in someone who's non-military, who's struggling, you might not see those same cries for help in a veteran. So I think it's really, outreach is so important. Peer-to-peer connection. Fred was talking about Dwyer, which is fantastic. We try to, and we're not clinical, within our office, but we do try to implement that peer-to-peer connection as well. As students matriculate into Stony Brook, they are paired with a peer sponsor before their first day of classes. That peer sponsor reaches out. We include their military bio, a photo, a personal message, and the message essentially is, I'm your buddy. I'm your person. Come to me with any issue. If you don't want to go to someone in administration or a faculty member, start here. And we find that can make all the difference. But outreach is really important, and checking in, even when it seems like someone is doing well, to continue to check in with them.
I think in higher ed, we often talk about access to care and certainly want to reduce stigma for then seeking care. I'm curious, could you talk a little about how do our veteran students both access benefits on the healthcare side and then even educational benefits? Are there a lot of hoops to jump through, logistics? How does it all work?
So there are multiple chapters of education benefits that a veteran can fall under. They might be eligible for multiple chapters just due to their one service contract. We do recommend that veterans start with the VA. So they go on va.gov, or they can start while they're still in service, but they can figure out which benefit they might be eligible for and then apply for it. And once they're approved, they work with us to get that processed. As far as disability benefits, once a veteran has left the service, if they feel that they've left the service with a service-connected disability, they can apply for compensation for that disability. They can do that on their own, or they can do that with the help of a veteran service officer. VSOs are great. They're free, and they will help the veteran through that process, through every step. And it can be overwhelming if they attempt to do this by themselves. So VSOs are helpful in that way. And we also try to make the process more streamlined for them once they arrive at the university with accessing the benefit and getting the most out of it.
Rick and Judi, I can't tell you how many times we get a veteran in his or her 80s, meaning age range, and they've never applied for any benefits. And they served in Vietnam, they served in Korea, and we connect that dot for them. We actually have a VSO, or a veteran service officer, in our main lobby. We actually reached out to Suffolk County. Marcel Lays is the director of Suffolk County Veterans Affairs. and she has put a veteran service officer in our main lobby, not just for the nursing home residents, but for anybody who's a veteran on campus that needs to learn about his or her benefits. The sad fact is that people don't keep up with all the changes. We had something as recent as the PACT Act, which President Biden signed into law right before he left, and that gave presumptions on certain illnesses where you can collect your benefits. But VA doesn't come to you and say, hey, here it is.
Yeah.
You have to reach out to them and do the work at the end of the day. The bottom line, and Jane probably knows this, the minute you get out of the service, we tell people register with the VA. Go spend that half a day to full day sitting in Northport, doing whatever you have to do to get registered, because it's going to pay off down the road. So, and there's so many more presumptives that are coming out vis-a-vis Congress over the years. So you have to stay connected to know what those things are.
It's true. You really don't want to leave benefits on the table.
Right.
So I absolutely agree with that. Connect with the VA sooner rather than later.
Right. And I do want to mention one thing. If you have a service-connected disability, VA will give you a rating. That rating is from 0 to 100%. It could be for physical. It could be for mental. But what I want our listeners to understand, any veteran that is rated 70% or more has free nursing home care in any state veterans home coming to them for the rest of their life. And I can't tell you how many times I'll go to an American Legion post to give a speech. There'll be 60 or 70 guys and gals in the room, and only 1 or 2 people know about this benefit. So again, if you're a listener to this podcast and you know somebody who has a VA service-connected disability rating of 70% or more, please tell him or her that they can cancel their long-term care insurance policy, for which I'm sure they're spending thousands of dollars on, and they're entitled to care at any of the 172 state veterans homes in America.
Fred, I'm glad you shared that, because 2 things came to mind. My father was in the Korean War, and when he was coming to end of life, of course, we were trying to make a plan, and we started realizing all these benefits that he
Was entitled to.
to. And so, note to self, and then also my brother-in-law, end of life. And so, again, how do we get this information? Because it's tens of thousands of dollars that you will invest that takes away from, kind of the quality of life issues on families. So I want to touch a little bit on families, because we talk about veterans being deployed and having these military backgrounds, so do their families. And so I wonder if there's a little bit you can share about some of the services and supports that are also that the families can expect.
So when we talk about our military-connected students at Stony Brook, we not only include the student veterans in those numbers, and then that correspondence, we're talking about the children of the veterans, the spouses of the veterans, and whether or not the veteran has passed down education benefits to that spouse or child. If they're a student at Stony Brook and they're military-connected, they're a part of our family. So that's the essence of it, is we are one big military family. In our office, we have student employees who are working under work study for us. And while the majority are student veterans, we also have military dependents, and they bring a whole new perspective to the table. Their stories are just as compelling. They've gone through hardships, they've gone through struggles and sacrifices, and they can really talk about that as the daughters of fathers who both served in the military, one in the Navy, one in the Army, and they bring a whole new perspective to the conversation.
We have family support groups, so we're a little different. The typical nursing home, if you look at the male to female ratio, typical nursing home will be 75% female, 25% male, and that's because girls live longer than guys. But in our home, it's about 90% men, and because of that, we see a higher traffic level with visitors. And the reason is, if you're married, your spouse is literally visiting 8 days a week. So, and friendships form, bonds form. And it's not unusual for a family member to stay connected to the home even after their loved one has passed away. And we see a lot of that, in our population at the home. If we could, I'd like to get back to benefits and alert our listeners to the fact that while the federal government offers certain benefits, depending on what state you reside in, that state also gives numerous benefits as well to veterans and their military families. Just a quick example in New York State. We offer free vehicle registration, which can save you a couple of dollars at the end of the day. And I didn't know this till last night, but you could ride on the New York State Thruway for free with your Easy Pass and get credits for that as well.
Who knew?
No doubt.
We all do now.
Yeah. And also, depending on the locale that you live in, there's also property tax exemptions, which is a very big deal here on Long Island. especially with our high tax base for property taxes. So again, it's a local question, but you should at least answer that question for whatever town you live in.
And who would you direct these questions if you're trying to get clarification? Who would you contact?
Well, here in Stony Brook, it's the town of Brookhaven, but you
Okay.
could live in the town of Southampton or the town of, every town has its own guidelines and application process, but don't leave that on the table.
No, well, thank you for communicating those important benefits. So as I wrap up our time today, I'm going to ask one last question. If you could each share with me, what is the most rewarding part of the work that you do each day?
For me, it's just making a difference in someone's life. We live in a big country with a lot of people, but I think for our veteran population, I'm seeing it a lot with our Vietnam veterans who had exposed to the ravages of Agent Orange. So anything to do with cancer or neuromuscular diseases and just to be able to provide in their latter years a safe and comfortable environment for them is a very big deal to me personally and for many of my employees at the home.
Transitioning from the military back to civilian life, and then not only civilian life, but to academia is so overwhelming. It can be a rough transition, and we are honored that our office can help ease the burdens of that and help bring our student veterans into the fold of community again. We want them to feel just as connected to each other as they did when they were serving. And so we try to instill programs that help with that camaraderie and that sense of belonging. And that's by far the most rewarding part of the job.
And we have graduation coming up soon. So how does that feel when you have a lot of our students walking across the stage?
Wow.
It's very bittersweet. I think I'm in some deep denial, honestly, because I feel like they're mine. And it's almost like you have this sense of like, oh my goodness, we raised you. You know, I remember when we first got there and they were looking around kind of wide-eyed and disoriented. And now it's like they're just so laser focused and confident. And you can see it all come together in that graduation. It's amazing.
Well, thank you so much for both of you for sharing your insights today. We hope our listeners find these discussions informative and empowering as we navigate these times together. Thank you again to our guests for their valuable contributions.
Yeah, I just want to say I think you're just both, and you and your teams are just amazing points of pride for all of us at Stony Brook. So thank you for all that you do for our veterans. So join us next time as we explore the state of research and grants in higher education. For now, I'm Rick Gatteau.
And I'm Judi Brown Clarke, and we will see you, and thank you for tuning in.